Greetings, Mavericks and new viewers. Tonight, direct and live from the Maverick News Network World Studios. This is Maverick News with Rick Walker.
No shortage of news tonight. Protests on campuses. Police on campuses where the protests are happening. Billions of additional dollars being spent on the military. New funding in Canada. More countries, more NATO countries saying it's okay for Ukraine to use their weapons to hit military targets in Russia. Vladimir Putin telling people that everyone who is Russian needs to feel like they're immobilized in order to achieve their goals. Sounds like a call to arms of sorts. What else? Boy, so many things, I can't remember them all. Donald Trump, hush money trial. The jury has started deliberations, but they're on pause. They've adjourned for the night. Without a verdict, the world awaits. And I will be right back after this. We'll dig into all that and more in just a moment. Stay with me.
Maverick News. The world is watching. Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News, Maverick News. Defending free speech, free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Okay, for those of you just joining us on Instagram tonight, as the feed just took hold over there, welcome. As I said just in the previous opener, no shortage of news tonight. Where shall we begin? How about with what's going on with this situation in Ukraine? More countries, more NATO countries, signaling to Ukraine that it is okay to use the weapons they are supplying to attack military targets inside Russia. The logic, the rationale, I guess, is the the better word behind this is that Russia is launching rocket or missile attacks from positions inside Russia proper against locations inside Ukraine, in particular areas near the border in places like Kharkiv. And in order to mount any kind of defense, Ukraine has been requesting permission to use Western weapons against those targets on the other side of the border. Until now, there have been restrictions in place, especially from the United States, preventing Ukraine from doing that. They're supposed to be used only within the Ukrainian borders. Now, I know that some attacks, some things have been launched from Ukraine into Russia. We're told that it's drones that have been used, not from the weapons stockpiles that have been provided by countries imposing those kinds of restrictions. So things seem to be shifting, and rapidly, in this conflict, with Russia making claims of gains on the battlefield, with a lot of the information flowing from the Russian side saying that Ukraine is in a lot of trouble, and even mainstream media in the West acknowledging that Ukraine does have a manpower issue on the front lines. All that going on, and Vladimir Putin making a statement here, and I'm going to have to assume that the translation is correct here because I do not speak Russian. I believe this is probably accurate based on the source and from other places where I've tried to confirm this online, so I think this is accurate. I will share this with you. He is saying that Russia is already seeing soldiers from NATO countries on the ground in Ukraine under the guise, as he puts it, of being there as mercenaries. He says, of course, they hunt me down. We hear it on the air, English, French, Polish. We know they are there, he says.
Мы слышим, в эфире слышим то английскую речь, то французскую, польскую. Мы знаем, что они там есть.
These so-called mercenaries, but there are specialists under the guise of mercenaries.
Так называемые наемники, да? Но под видом наемников там специалисты находятся. Вот.
There was a question about high-precision weapons of long range. Who controls this weapon? Who serves it?
Был вопрос по высокоточному оружию большой дальности. А кто там этим оружием управляет? Кто его обслуживает? Ну, конечно.
Of course, he says, it is the instructors under the guise of mercenaries. That's all. They are there and they bear losses.
Вот эти самые инструкторы под видом наемников. Вот и все. Они и есть. И несут потери. Может быть, так.
He goes on and says, perhaps this statement is related to the fact that it is becoming more and more difficult for them to conceal these losses.
Заявление связано с тем, чтобы им все труднее, видимо, и труднее скрывать эти потери. Значит, поэтому, может быть.
He says, perhaps it is time to show that they are officially present and to show these losses in a real and legal way. I don't know, maybe.
Настало время показать, что там официальное присутствие, чтобы и потери не показывать реально, легально. Не знаю, может быть.
Vladimir Putin. If that information gains traction, proves to be true, if there is some exposure, that could trigger serious escalation. We are seeing tonight that Canada, of course, is among those countries that is saying there are no restrictions for Ukraine in the way that they use the weapons that Canada has been supplying, and growing, mounting pressure from within the Biden administration to take a similar path, follow suit. And the word is that the administration in Washington is becoming more open to that possibility. While that's going on, today, Defense Minister Bill Blair in Canada has announced a major new funding package for Canada's military. He was present today at a trade show in Canada called CANSEC. It's the annual Global Defense and Security Trade Show in Ottawa. It's hosted by the Canadian Association of Defense and Security Industries. And while there, he announced major new spending, in particular for the Air Force. He talked about the government's updated defense policy. It sets out $73 billion worth of projects and procurements over the next 20 years. That includes an additional $8.1 billion in spending in the next 4 years alone, which will bring Canada closer to the NATO alliance targeted spending of 2% of gross domestic product on defense. It's not going to be quite up to snuff, not quite to that level. Canada's still falling short, spending, according to this plan, only about 1.76% of the GDP by 2029-2030, so still not meeting its obligations under the agreements signed with NATO. But 23 U.S. senators last week signed a letter to Prime Minister Trudeau saying that they are, in their words, profoundly disappointed that Canada won't meet its obligation by the end of this decade. So here's Bill Blair talking about, the Defense Minister, talking about Canada's new spending plans and the way it will affect the military, in particular the Royal Canadian Air Force. For Canada, this is a major new expenditure. He's at CANSEC.
Today, I have the privilege of announcing that we have now signed an $11.2 billion contract with SkyAlyne, which will deliver future aircraft training program in collaboration with the Royal Canadian Air Force. SkyAlyne will help to train RCAF pilots, air combat systems officers, and airborne electronic sensor operators. And with this contract, our air crews will train on 5 different fleets, more than 70 aircraft in total, preparing our crews to operate both fixed-wing aircraft and helicopters for the RCAF of the future. SkyAlyne will also provide classroom instruction, simulator flight training, as well as on-site support at RCAF wings. And with this program, we're ensuring that current and future RCAF air crews will have the most advanced equipment and training available. And this contract will of course include an Indigenous participation plan, which commits to investing a minimum of 5% of the total contract value, excluding the cost of aircraft and simulators, to Indigenous businesses. This particular contract will create and maintain over 3,400 jobs in Canada over the next 25 years. It's going to deliver for the RCAF precisely what they need. It ensures a strong future for the RCAF. This is just one element of the largest investment that the Royal Canadian Air Force has seen since the Second World War. This year we're celebrating the 100th anniversary of the RCAF. And as we celebrate this centennial, I am more optimistic than ever about its future. We also, of course, have to make pretty significant investments in the Canadian Army. And today, I'm also announcing that we are investing $2.58 billion with General Dynamics Land Systems Canada and Marshall Canada in a joint venture for a new fleet of light and heavy logistics vehicles, equipment, and in-service support for the Canadian Army. In total, this investment is going to deliver over 1,000 light trucks and approximately 500 heavy trucks to our military, as well as associated equipment such as armored protection kits, containers, trailers, and interchangeable modules that can be turned into ambulances, command posts, and much more. These new vehicles are going to be the workhorses of the Canadian Army. They're going to transport everything from personnel to equipment to supplies in combat zones and across Canada after natural disasters. Our new fleet will carry heavier loads, it'll be more mobile, it's going to offer much better protection for our people in uniform. The first vehicles are currently expected to arrive by 2027, and I understand some of them are on display at the General Dynamics booth just outside this hall, and I invite you to go by and have a look at them. This contract is also going to include an Indigenous participation plan to Indigenous businesses, as well as creating employment, training, skills development for Canadians. I'm very proud that these contracts have been awarded to leading Canadian industry partners who have demonstrated their commitment to supporting the Canadian Armed Forces and creating real economic benefits for all Canadians, to everyone involved in these projects, to our partners today as we announce this project, but in the many years of work together that we have in front of us. I want to say thanks. Thank you for your commitment. Thank you for your partnership. And we will be with you as we deliver for the Canadian Armed Forces.
Okay. So, I guess the good news is they're planning on being around 25 years from now. So that makes me feel a little bit better, given all the saber rattling that we've been hearing. Because we're now seeing that we have 11 countries that have given permission to Ukraine to strike targets inside Russia with the weapons that they are providing. And Russia sees this obviously as a provocation, but, or at least that's the way it's being played out by one half of the media machine out there. The other side, I mean, I certainly see the rationale behind this decision. If you have an enemy lobbing missiles at you from their side of the border, and you're not allowed to do anything about it at all, you're just sort of a sitting duck. You're not allowed to defend yourself. So I see the logic. Whether you want to support it or not, that's up to you. Will the United States support it? That's the larger question. That's the $64 trillion question. But apparently the Biden administration is signaling tonight that they are looking at this. They say they've made no final decision, but it is under consideration. That according to two senior Biden administration officials, they've essentially opened the door to this possibility, where until now they have imposed this restriction, that these weapons that the United States is providing should only be used within the Ukrainian borders. So if the United States gives the green light to this, it'll open the door to all of NATO doing it, essentially. Obviously, there is concern that this could lead to escalation, and that is what the United States is clearly afraid of here. But right now, still no change on the policy from the United States. Nevertheless, with those 11 countries now signaling this, it will give Ukraine a path forward to that kind of intervention. 19 bodies now identified, according to Ukrainian officials, in that shopping center tragedy where we saw a missile strike, that hypercenter as it was called or is called over there, a phrase not used over here in the West. It's a shopping center. And apparently 19 people were killed there. 19 people identified so far. Anyway, you slice it, it's tragic. So, let's take a little break. We'll come back. We'll start digging into what's going on with these protests on campuses across Canada and the United States, and to some degree, well, not to a degree, all around the world. We have ourselves a global protest on our hands because of what's going on in Gaza.
The information war is raging. Truth without integrity is worth nothing. Maverick News. Because those who have power and those who seek it must be held accountable.
The world is watching.
Join our family of truth seekers. Donate today and add your voice to the chorus of Maverick Knights. Donate at maverickdonations.com. Truth. Integrity. It's the Maverick way. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Maverick News. The world is watching.
Okay, so these protests are not going away. They're continuing. Tonight in Ottawa, Chris Stacey on the scene. He's been covering a pretty sizable demo up there in the nation's capital, Ottawa. First on Parliament Hill. Now the pro-Palestinian protesters have made their way to, they were on Wellington Street, now they've made their way over to the front area on the street at the Ottawa Police Service headquarters, where they're demanding apparently the release of their comrades. Let me run this.
57 kids are dead! 57 kids are dead! You're arresting nothing dead! Palestine! Free Palestine! Free Palestine! Free Palestine! Free Palestine! From the sea to the river! Palestine will live forever! Eternal army to Palestine!
Elgin Street completely blocked here. Ottawa Police Headquarters. We have paddy wagon and public order now parked down the street here. So we are in front of Ottawa Police Headquarters, 474 Elgin Street. The crowd here is demanding the release of their comrades. There was multiple people arrested this morning outside the EY Centre, and at least one arrested outside of the House of Commons when OPP broke up the hours-long blockade. This crowd is demanding the release of their comrades. I don't know if they're going to have much success. Behind me here you can see now lined up paddy wagon and multiple vans of public order units. So it looks like police are staging and getting ready to move in here. Stand by for more.
We'll keep an eye on that. That's in the nation's capital. Pressure mounting at Ottawa Police Services headquarters. Out on the other end of the country, on the west coast, British Columbia, at UBC Police moved in there today, too. This is what it looked like on the streets. RCMP have notified pro-Palestinian protesters there that they will be arrested if they don't, or they told them they would be arrested if they didn't clear the intersection at University Boulevard and Westbrook Mall. And this is what it looked like earlier today as police marched down the street to clear the area. And then the pro-Palestinian protesters went on to disrupt graduation celebrations where parents and other students were celebrating. And this is what that looked like. So, not looking, terribly volatile there, but what we are seeing is some of these streets are being disrupted. Concerns here about access to a hospital route here.
Disclose! Divest! We will not stop! We will not rest! Disclose! Divest! We will not stop! We will not rest! Disclose! Divest! We will not stop! We will not rest! Free! Free Palestine!
Oh, and and then there's this talking about, police.
Oink, Biggie, Biggie! Oink, Biggie, Biggie! We are gonna run the city! We are gonna run the city! The students! You...
Why do I have a feeling they might already be running the city? Just saying. Now, so this is the stuff that's going on across Canada tonight and in locations really around the world. We've seen also this week that at UQAM, University of Quebec at Montreal, they have now been granted a partial injunction there to control the situation involving the protest on site, the encampment. A court there has ruled, a judge finally came down with a decision from the Superior Court. Judge Louis Joseph Gowan listened to arguments from both sides in the case, and he has ruled saying, quote, there is definitely an urgent need to clearly circumscribe and generally regulate the exercise of the right to freedom of expression of the defendants, being the protesters, including that of demonstrating peacefully and safely. It is definitely preferable to intervene before an unfortunate event only happens afterwards. Unfortunate, he says, goes on, he says that safety measures need to be put in place urgently at the encampment, and he says that doing so won't infringe on the encampment members' right to protest. He is prohibiting protesters from setting up tents and other material within 2 meters of campus buildings instead of the 3 meters that university administrators had requested. So some restrictions now being placed on those protesters. This is a temporary injunction. It is in effect only for a period going to June 6th. So far, it doesn't look like very much, if anything, has changed on site at UCAM. It's been pretty much status quo. We have seen vandalism, spray painting on the university windows, barricades set up, and university administrators there have issued a statement saying that they have no investment in armaments and that neither do they have a mobility agreement nor a framework agreement with Israeli universities. While these protesters are demanding divestment from such organizations or companies, the university is saying they don't have the kind of investments that the protesters are alleging. It's a bit of a mess, isn't it? I don't know if it really matters at this point what kind of investments they have. I'm not so sure that the demands being put forth by the protesters, I don't know that that's really what their focus is anyway. Back to Ottawa now, where students and activists have been called today during a news conference to cut ties with Israeli institutions. The human rights group Justice for All Canadians, part of a news conference in the nation's capital, the group is calling on universities and colleges to divest from Israeli entities involved in human rights violations in Palestine. That is what they are saying. Those are their words. And we have now Ganayat Sadiq, an Ottawa-based advocacy officer with Justice for All Canada, speaking to this. And there were more youth-oriented statements made during other news conferences today that tie into this, but we will begin here.
The advocacy officer for Justice for All
Sadiq.
Canada. This is a nonprofit organization focused on preventing genocide against minorities, communities using our consultative role at the United Nations. We are gathered today on the unceded, unsurrendered land of the Anishinaabe Algonquin. Over the past 7 months, we have exposed the ongoing genocide in Palestine to the Canadian government right here on Parliament Hill. We have called on the Canadian government to uphold human rights principles and demand an end to Israel's relentless collective punishment on Palestinians. This includes confronting Israel's decades-long of apartheid, its prolonged occupation of Palestinian territories, and the suffocating 17-year blockade of Gaza. Yet here we are again, confronted by the harrowing aftermath of the Israeli government's deliberate attack on Palestinian civilians in the Rafah Tel al-Sotan area, an alleged safe zone. The images are devastating. Bodies burned to ashes, charred and blackened beyond recognition, children decapitated and torn apart by massive bombs, parents clutching their dead and burned children screaming in horror, and rescuers pulling out charred remains from burning tents, with wounded victims being rushed to hospitals with horrific injuries. While the Canadian government has acknowledged the heinous nature of the Israeli government's actions, the government's approach remains disappointingly cautious and reserved. It is clear, indecision and superficial responses can no longer be tolerated. Justice tents cannot protect unarmed Palestinians from 2,000-pound bombs. They cannot shield Canadian students from the brutal force used by police to dismantle their peaceful encampments. Since April 27th, students and faculty across Canadian universities have courageously set up encampments on their campuses, demanding that their institution cut ties with Israel amidst the ongoing crisis in Gaza. Historically, students have led the charge for justice and peace on campuses in the fight for Palestinian liberation, including the peaceful movement against the Vietnam War and the South African apartheid movement. Campuses remain spaces for robust debate, dialogue, and calls for change, not areas for suppression. Today, Justice for All Canada stands in solidarity with these peaceful encampments. We call upon the Canadian government, both federally and provincially, to protect the right to protest, to listen, and address the demands being raised. We strongly condemn any aggressive measures or police involvement in forcefully removing students from their encampments. In accordance with international law, we urge university administrators to reject complicity and listen to student voices for divestment from Israeli entities implicit in genocide. And we also urge to avoid penalizing students or allies for their activism. The urgency of the protest is undeniable, and I thank you all for being here today. I would now like to introduce our first speaker, Caitlin Anderson, a PhD student in the Faculty of Communications and Media Studies at the University of Calgary, as well as a former journalist and digital rights policy activist and the organizer of the University of Calgary's encampment.
Thank you very much. So my name is Caitlin Anderson. I'm a PhD student at the University of Calgary. I'm also one of the students that was assaulted by riot police after my university administration invited them onto our campus. Like many schools around the world and across Canada, students in Calgary made the decision to speak out against the genocide and decades-long occupation of Palestine. The University of Calgary has economic investments and partnerships with companies that profit off of the surveillance, the occupation, and the murder of Palestinians, including weapons and technology manufacturers, including Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, and Honeywell. The full extent to which the UFC props up and benefits Israel's genocide in Gaza is unclear, which is why we are demanding that our university fully disclose all direct investments made by the school, as well as full divestment from companies complicit in genocide. I've been on and off at the Calgary campus for the better part of 2 decades, having done my undergraduate and master's degree at the school. And on May 9th, the day of our encampment, I'd never been more proud to be part of the campus community. Throughout the day, the encampment kept growing and growing as people stopped to talk with us and laugh and sing and eat and just be in community with one another. Our campus in our city isn't known for its activism, and the large number of students that showed up and the huge ways in which our community came together around us was really incredible and gave me a lot of hope for the future. Before the sun had set, that optimism transformed into confusion as police surrounded our camp, dressed in riot gear with helmets, shields, and guns. After our camp was fully dismantled, they advanced on students anyways. We were singing arm in arm, and the Calgary Police Service brutalized us with batons and shields, kicking our legs and tear gassing us. They shot pepper bullets all around us and threw stun grenades at us, which I've learned are designed to shock the nervous system. One landed inches from my feet and everything went white and made a sound I can't even begin to describe. I left campus coughing and gagging from the pepper spray and tear gas and in total shock. At urgent care, I had a CT scan done because doctors were concerned that the police had fractured my skull. Since then, I've been doing my best to keep up with my research while coping with a concussion. Like all Canadians, students have a right to protest. As a PhD student, I am so privileged to be able to spend my time on campus. And I think that as public institutions, universities should serve not only students, but the wider community. University campuses are special places to gather, to debate, and to challenge ingrained ways of thinking. And as previous charter cases have made clear, including a 2020 decision centered in Alberta, campuses are protected places when it comes to freedom of expression. The University of Calgary administration violated those rights when they chose to sic riot police on us instead of engaging with us, their own students. Despite this, I've only become more proud to be part of the University of Calgary community. Because the UC is not its administration. It is its faculty, its staff, and its students. In the weeks following the violent suppression of our charter rights, Our community has shown us so much support in almost daily rallies and events, including a demonstration yesterday where faculty and staff, donning helmets, made a show of care by making a circle around students and proclaiming that anyone wishing us harm would have to go through them first. Their helmets, a symbolic protection against the culture of fear and intimidation created by university administration for the simple act of speaking out against genocide. I want to pause to thank them and everyone who spoke up on our behalf. It has meant so much, and we feel your care. In addition to our calls to disclose and divest, we are also calling on the university to adopt a zero tolerance policy towards anti-Palestinian racism on campus, as well as the provision of mental health care support for Palestinian students and for those who have been made to feel unsafe on campus due to police action on May 9th. I and fellow students, as well as more than 600 faculty and staff at the UC, are calling for the resignation of President Ed McCauley and for a full independent investigation into the actions of the Calgary Police Service, for the transparency into the decisions and communications that led up and followed the events of May 9th. Disclose, divest, we will not stop, we will not rest. Thank you for your time.
Interesting, that reference was made there to the right to protest under international law. Is that even a real thing? Like, really? There's reference made to things like freedom of expression, peaceful assembly, and there's references made to those rights in some international treaties. The truth is, when it comes right down to it, when it comes to international law, there really are no rights. Not when you have nations with sovereignty. Your rights do come from, natural law, if you want to call it that, but the only way to protect those rights is to have some sort of enforcement mechanism behind it, so that if your rights are violated, there's someone there to defend those rights. That would be police, the courts. If you're talking about international law, it becomes very murky. And even with treaties under the United Nations, there really is no enforcement mechanism there. What really provides you with those rights is the voluntary surrender of some degree of sovereignty by any nation state that signs on to those agreements, and then the willingness of that nation state to abide by whatever is in those treaties. And then the only thing that really truly enforces it is if other nation states that have signed on to that hold those other nation states accountable through an enforcement mechanism and arbitration process that would be employed by a body like the United Nations and some sub-body that would then be designated to deal with that. And this is a very murky thing. And that's why once you get outside the border of Canada or get outside the border of the United States, you get into other countries or even international waters, there are some, standards, law. I won't even call them laws, but they call it international law. Some international laws that are recognized by nation states around the world to some degree, but enforcing any of that, that's a whole different matter. And when you're inside Canada, I'll tell you this, your right to protest, the right for those protesters to express themselves on university campuses or anywhere else, they're being protected not by international law. They're being protected by Canadian law. And while even though those cops went in and busted up the encampment that she's speaking of in that previous incident, the truth of the matter is, and you've seen this on full display, police, government here exercising a lot of restraint. The truth of the matter is, these courts are being extremely lenient and tolerant of these protests going on to date because they are in reality violating a number of different laws. And so the court then here in Canada has to find a balance between the law, the property rights of the university, the property rights and the rights of the other students who attend classes there, and whether or not they are given access to the facilities, the rights of the general public to access the property versus the rights of the protesters to express themselves, and how long these protests go on. And this has to be assessed on an ongoing basis during a demonstration like this. This is a legal process. There's no universal international law that is protecting any of these protesters. And I'll tell you this, if it wasn't for the Canadian law, they would have had their butts kicked out of there a long time ago. They're being protected by the law, whether she realizes it or not. And there's a lot more protection under Canadian law than there is under any international law, because there's no enforcement mechanism. And when I say enforcement, I mean enforcing the law to protect someone's rights and also limit them in order to protect the rights of other people, to find that balance. It's a complicated thing. We've been exploring that right here on this channel, that same scenario with free speech in our chat and on this channel. The only way you can have a serious discussion about free speech, freedom of expression, right to protest, freedom of assembly, all of these rights, is to talk about what restrictions you place on those rights. And you place those restrictions to a reasonable level, reasonable, in order to protect the rights of other people, so that everyone is treated fairly under a system of democracy. It's the job of the government. It's the job of the Constitution. It's the job of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, the Bill of Rights, to protect the rights that people have. It's not that you get your rights from the government. It's not that the Constitution gives you those rights. You have those rights. But the only way you get to keep them is if the government is there to protect you from people who want to take those rights away from you. That's the way that it works. These protesters, in my estimation, have in many cases, not every case, but in many of these protests, have crossed the line. They crossed the line quite a long time ago. Vandalism doesn't give you the right to vandalize things. You have the right to protest. You don't have the right to spray paint the property with graffiti. You have the right to assemble and protest on campus. You don't have the right to restrict access to Jewish students or members of the media or the general public and say you can't come into this common area where the public is allowed to attend. You can be there to protest, but you should not be allowed to restrict access to other people. It's unconstitutional. It's not fair. I can go on. They crossed the line a long time ago, but courts also understand that when it comes to a protest like this, or any of these kinds of protests, they have to gauge things. And sometimes they err on the side of one side or the other in order to strike what they think is a proper balance based on the mood of the public, the volatility of a situation, to keep the peace, and also to just make sure that the rights of freedom of expression, freedom of assembly, freedom of speech, that these things are really protected, because in a democracy, these things are extremely valuable. More valuable sometimes than enforcing, say, property rights and issuing a trespass notice to people. So they will allow the violation to some degree of the public's right to enjoy a common area, a public area, in order to make sure that freedom of speech is protected. But it can only go on for so long before democracy itself is undermined, because people who are sitting there screaming, "I have a right to free speech," sometimes are a little disingenuous. They quite often want free speech for themselves, but not for other people. And holding property hostage, or indeed even holding human beings hostage, that's not about free speech. That's about terrorism. That's blackmail. That's a lot of things. But it sure as heck isn't freedom of speech. We need to be very careful about what we allow to happen here across this country. If you want to keep your free country and keep your freedom, you need to stand up for it. You need to make sure that you don't allow other people to violate it. Oh, you can let people push. You can even let them go over the line a little bit for a while. But at some point, you need to push back against it in order to keep people free. I said this to somebody just 2 days ago about Justin Trudeau. Treason Trudeau. And, you know, some people call for violent actions even against some of these politicians that they're so upset about. Because, yes, the politicians in this country did cross the line. There was government overreach during the pandemic. They went way too far. They locked people down, masked people up, forced people to get a thingy in the arm. Yeah, too much overreach. Went way too far. The motivations, the reason for that, that's open to debate and interpretation. But when I hear people saying we need to drag the Prime Minister out and arrest the Prime Minister and do unspeakable things, I remind them, I say, these politicians may deserve to be held accountable. But be very, very careful. We must preserve, we should protect, we need to protect the rights of even Justin Trudeau in order to preserve our own.
Maverick News. The world is watching.
Other stuff going on in Ottawa, nation's capital, all connected back to this stuff. I have to tell you, I'm amazed. Every day when I think things can't get weirder or worse, it gets weirder and it gets worse. What am I talking about? I'm talking about, a push. This has been tried before, failed, but why do I feel like it's going to happen now? They are advocating for lowering the voting age in Canada to 16. What could go wrong? They pay no taxes. They live at home with their mom and dad. They have never held down a regular job. They're not even out of high school. You remember what it was like when you were 16? How you thought you knew everything? You lost all respect for your parents. They were fuddy-duddies and didn't know anything. Remember? I remember how, my friends would talk, and young people. What do kids know? Nothing. No world experience, still an incomplete education, minds of mush, ready to be filled up by someone with ideas and information. God help us. The way the educational institutions in this country are today, I'm pretty sure the crap that's being pumped into the kids' brains is not accurate. And you want to get these kids out there voting, where the majority of their influence comes from their friends and indoctrinated or controlled teachers, filling their heads full of a left-wing political agenda, a woke political agenda? I don't know. Even if they're being exposed to some conservatism, they just don't have any life experience. But here's what they were talking about today in Ottawa. This is actually related. This is called to these other news conferences that we were talking about. That news conference we just shared with you, where they were talking about don't dismantle the encampments. These were sort of joint, back-to-back conferences today, and they're connected, all these organizations. This group called Vote 16. This news conference held as part of its national summit in support of lowering the voting age to 16. So this is Senator Mary Lou McPhedran. She was there with some people from the Green Party and people from an organization called Apathy is Boring. It's just so boring. Apathy. Better care. Well, as long as you care. As long as you care, I feel much better about it. To give that kid a ballot. Here's what she had to say today.
In a nutshell, we're here because Francophone young leaders more than 20 years ago came up with the idea of lowering the federal voting age to 16. And over the past 20 years, numerous attempts have been made by various members of parliament from different parties to bring in a bill to actually accomplish this. I'm the first senator to introduce a bill on the Senate side to lower the federal voting age to 16, and my bill is still active in the Senate. We had a very powerful speech yesterday, and we will be revisiting the issue again next week. But today is about the Ottawa Summit on Vote 16 and two key takeaways from the research that's been done ever since Austria was the first major country to lower the voting age at all levels in its country in 2007. And the research has been done almost daily since then. And now what we have is a big difference between 20 years after the first bills were introduced to now. 20 years ago, it was all about opinion and prejudice because there was no research. 20 years later, we have a lot of credible, published academic research from a number of different countries, and a number of those experts are here with us at the summit. And it comes down to this: nothing bad happens when you lower the federal voting age to 16.
Depends on your perspective.
It's all good. In fact, in the words of the Conservative leader in the United Kingdom, after changing her mind about this issue, she said, everything is positive about lowering the federal voting age to 16. So without further ado, I'm going to welcome and ask my parliamentarian colleague, Mike Morris, to say a few words.
And so, without further ado, I will take out my flamethrower and set the entire nation ablaze with chaos and anarchy. Jesus. No! Okay, just no. No, no, no. They've been trying to do it for 20 years. There's a reason it isn't happening. Hasn't happened. Because it's a bad idea. Okay? It's a really, really, really bad idea having kids go to vote. Just my opinion. Just, oh my. Okay. That brings me to something, that came to mind today. I woke up in a cold sweat. Thinking about the show we did here last night. About the Thirsty for the Talk, sex education, extreme sex education program that has now been banned out in New Brunswick because the premier there didn't know what they're actually going to teach. He was told that this sex ed program was going to be about HPV. It turns out if you go to the website, it's about positions and relationships and sex acts that I've never even heard of before. But at least now I've learned what furry porn is. Okay? Sort of. I think it's where you use Rogaine. I'm joking. Okay? As in place of anything slippery. Just saying. Okay? That's furry porn. Oh my God, did I just say that? Oh my God. Oh, how can I talk about this? Here's the thing. Yesterday, as part of all of that, I did run this clip of someone talking about a Canada-wide student walkout in response to the ongoing issue about the pride flag being flown outside schools and government buildings, which is an ongoing issue, and some communities have dealt with it differently than others. Some say no more of that, only the Canadian flag or government flags, and other communities still flying the flag, which is sort of a political thing. But anyway, with regard to the walkout, I understand the issue, and I understand that it is very divisive. But stop. We have to stop. I'm not supporting it. I'm against a Canada-wide student walkout in schools over this issue, or really pretty much any other issue. At this level, with this level of intensity being applied to put pressure on the system. Why? You might say, well, we have to do something. Here's the thing. They want your kids to walk out. Yeah. Why are they putting these programs into schools? It's not, this is, again, me editorializing, analyzing. Let me share this with you. They're not putting these programs into the schools, the drag queen story time things, this program where it's so explicit that it's making, the eyeballs pop out of parents' heads because they're so shocked, including me. And I think I'm a pretty open-minded guy, but anyway. They're doing it to piss you off. On purpose. They're doing it because this is coming from the radicalized left wing of the political spectrum. It's being fueled by organizations and maybe even foreign governments that are dumping money into these NGOs, non-governmental organizations that have found a way into our government system. They're doing it on purpose to destabilize everything, to piss you off. Guess what? It's working. And they want the response that they're getting. Whoever is behind it, and that is a very dark thing. You don't really know. Even if you trace the money, it's not always possible to figure out exactly what's accelerating this stuff. Unless you look at the signs on the college and university campuses where they're displaying openly the hammer and sickle. No, it's not. It's not the communists. No, it's not. It's not them at all. No, can't you tell? It's just the Palestinians. It's about the Jews. No, it's about a lot more than that. No, I didn't see no hammer and sickle on no sign. It's right over there. Jeez. Oh, they want you pissed off. And they want your kids to walk out. They want them on the streets protesting, disrupting things. They want disruption. They want the whole shooting match destabilized. They don't want your kids in class learning. They want them out on the streets like little foot soldiers, good little comrades, allies, BLM, Antifa. They want them out there marching in the streets. These minds full of mush are easy to manipulate. They're not fully formed yet. Think back. What was it like when you were in school? Do you ever have a walkout at your school? Well, there were a couple while I was in high school. How easy was it to get the kids to walk out? Super easy. Walk out! Everybody leaves the building. Why? We don't know. Doesn't matter. Because we're protesting colored shoelaces and sneakers. We don't like it. Doesn't matter what the protest was about, man. The kids didn't even know. They was just like, let's get out of school. It's like a get out of school free card in Monopoly. That's why they do it. And they go out and they protest and shout and holler, and the principal loses a few hairs and goes a little grayer because his job is on the line because he can't maintain order in the school. And then they say, any of you kids that took part in that, we're going to have to expel you. And they go, okay, cool, another week off school. You get a suspension. If you're really, really bad and keep doing it, you get expelled. But that's another matter. They want your kids out there protesting. They want you out there protesting alongside them. Remember I showed you that sign yesterday? Spray painted on the office of that Liberal member of Parliament? Palestine is burning, Toronto will too. Yeah, they want you to burn it down. They're not going to do it on their own. They want you they really want you out in front. Lighting the match. Or if it's already been lit, they want you dumping gasoline on it. And you know how you do that? You let your kids walk out of class. You know what we need to be doing? It's an upside down world right now. Use your freaking noggin. Here's what you need to be doing. And this goes triple for you kids out there. If there's any young ones listening tonight, this is what you need to do. If you care about your future, you need to stay in school. And when the other kids walk out, you need to not go. You know what you need to do? You need to convince your friends to stay in class. Do you know what's going on at that time, apparently? In a lot of schools, exams. That's what I'm told. End of the year. Critical time. Critical time. Some schools have issued notices that if kids don't go to school on those days and they miss exams, the only way that they're going to be saved is if they come back with a bona fide, genuine doctor's note. Don't blow your future. Don't blow your year. You know, the proper way to handle this, to get results. Oh, you may get results by burning the city down, but I wouldn't recommend it. I'm against it. You know the best way to do this? The opposite. The absolute opposite of what these radical whack jobs want you to do. Don't respond emotionally. Don't get angry. Get smart. Stay in class. Organize, a ribbon campaign or something sort of passive like that to draw awareness to the issue and have it ongoing. Seek dialogue. Demand dialogue. Within your school, with your principals, your teachers, demand a meeting, a public forum in the school auditorium. Go to your student council and have them demand that your teachers and the school board administrators do better. Go to the school board after class and demand a forum with your school board trustees, the people who get elected locally to run the schools. Demand better. Get your student union or student council presidents and the members of your student councils to represent you and apply pressure. Go to the media and get your student representatives, put those student council presidents to work. Get them to earn their status. They don't get paid. At least not when I was in school. Let's learn about the political process that way. You don't get the right to vote when you're 16, but you can sure learn about politics by doing what I'm just telling you to do right now. And make sure you stay in school and learn. Because what would you be out in the street protesting for anyway? Better education. Well, avail yourself of the education that's available to you right now and stay in class. Demand better. When you walk out, you're doing yourself a disservice. You're missing your classes. You're putting your year in jeopardy because it's exam time. And you're giving the people on the radical side of the political spectrum, which is wrapping around and coming out the other side, you're giving them exactly what they want. You're being manipulated. You're being used. Get smart. Don't get emotional. That's how you do it. And go to the media and request that they give you a voice. Come on here if you do something like that, and I will give you a platform. That's what this place is all about. It's about giving voice to the voiceless, or to those who often have trouble getting a voice. I'll give you the platform. Let's talk about that. Make use of this. Go to your mainstream media. Go to your local radio stations, your newspapers, and your local TV outlets, and put pressure on them. Say, we want to talk about this. We want attention drawn to this issue. And then hold those school board administrators, hold their feet to the fire. Not just your principal. The principals, they don't have any say in the curriculum, right? They have to do as they're told. Go to the school board. Go to your local members of provincial parliament. Education is a provincial matter, then delegated. The funding all comes from the province, pretty much, at the high school and elementary school levels. And the universities and colleges too, for the most part. It comes through transfer payments, but it's the provinces that control education in Canada. Similar kind of setup in the United States. That's the way you do it. Don't shoot yourself in the foot. I woke up in a cold sweat, not because I was afraid of these crazy political activists. I woke up in a cold sweat because last night I didn't properly address that. I hadn't thought it through enough. And by running the clip of that person calling for that student walkout nationwide, I was, in a way, giving amplification to the message and promoting it. That wasn't the intent. I'm just trying to inform. And I don't even know how much traction that campaign even has at this point. But I don't want to contribute to it because I don't want to contribute to the destabilization of our country. I don't want to give more power to the people who just want to burn it all to the ground. Telling you that we have to do that in order to get to a better place when they're not even telling you what things are going to look like when we get to that other place, because they're not telling you what their real plan is. But I can tell you this from a lot of experience dealing with folks like this. When you're seeing them display the hammer and sickle on a sign out in the open while telling you that you have to get out there and burn it down, when they're openly telling you that they want the city to burn, you should believe them. The masks have come off.
Maverick News. The world is watching.
Let's go back to Ottawa. Let's listen to one of these youngsters bestow wisdom upon us, shall we? Us all adults, we don't know anything. It's just like when watching some Disney movie or some, youth-oriented movie or family-oriented flick where, the stupid parents don't know anything and it's up to the genius, kid with a digitized brain to save the world from the evil megalomaniac. You know the standard script. The adults know nothing. Got to rely on those kids to save us. Well, I'm sorry, but this is not a movie. All right? This is real life. Nevertheless, here we go with a youngster telling us how it is up in Ottawa today at this roundtable discussion about this proposed legislation to let kids vote when they're 16.
Please take any follow-ups.
It's science,
yeah.
by the way.
So if I could get some of the young people also to weigh in on why it matters for you to have the voting age lowered to 16, but then also, again, a question for everybody. Why do you think it hasn't happened yet? What is the roadblock?
It's a bad idea.
And why can't you get this across the finish line? Because as you mentioned, you know, these efforts have been ongoing for at least a couple of decades
Looks like a little
to try
Pierre
and lower the
Poilievre.
voting age, and every attempt has failed so far. So what is the roadblock? And
When he
why
was
do you
still
think it
wearing
hasn't
glasses
happened yet?
before the
And
contact
if
lenses.
the young people could also weigh in on why, what it will mean for you to have a voice and a say in politics before the age of 18.
I don't mean to criticize the kid. He's
Thank you
smart
very much
kid.
once again. I am 15 years old. I wouldn't even be able to vote if Vote 16 was implemented. The Young Politicians of Canada is honored to be a community partner sharing conjuncting values with Vote 16. And I go to a school where I know that if my peers were able to participate in democracy before they're off to college, university, jobs, they would understand the values and the importance of citizens showing up to the polls and making our decision and checking off a ballot, because that is our job and that is our responsibility as individuals. And the Young Politicians of Canada is working on that through our campus clubs, through our placement programs, through walking into classrooms and making sure students are engaged and interested in democracy, because this is how we get students to show up to the polls as they're 18 now, and maybe as they're 16 in the future. I'd love to hear what Aishwarya has to say.
Sure.
Yeah, first of all, thank you so much for your question. I'm going to start off by saying how many young people, especially in Ontario, so I went to school in Ontario. I'm 18 right now, just finished my first year of university. We have a course, right, in high school. It's called Civics and Careers. How many young people actually paid attention in it? And the
None.
answer is very, very few.
So let them vote.
And a
What
lot
could
of the
go
time,
wrong?
people just do it over summer school. People do it as a course that they just want to get over with because they have to, because it's required. But if we were to
You just
lower
made
the
my
voting
point.
age, young people would realize that whatever they're learning in school, whatever policies or politics that is being shown on TV is actually important because they have a say there,
No,
right?
they wouldn't
It's about
care.
how we can grab their attention and how we can get them engaged at a very young age
Their
and
hormones
ensure
are
that this
pumping too high
continues
for them to pay
throughout. Because
attention.
let me tell you, not a lot of people in my high school were engaged in politics, that's for sure. And a lot of times, if you are engaged in politics as young people, you are ostracized. You are kind of seen as an outlier because it's not normal. But it should be normal because this is our future and this is our present that's at hand.
Layering
Thank
on
you.
responsibility is not going to convince them to pay more attention.
Any follow-ups?
You know, I'll add
Please.
my.
Let's listen to this youngster.
Si possible, je peux le faire en français ou en anglais. For me,
Except
it's the
it's
same. But
French,
I think,
so-
as I said in French, the youth are the future of this country.
So wait
as we
for the
know, there's
future to
about
vote.
2 million young individuals between the ages 16 and 17. What we decide today, what Ottawa decides today, impacts them directly. But that's why, as a young politicians in Canada, we have Jaden over here who's 15, Aishwarya who's 18. Our entire organization is an organization built by youth for youth, because we recognize in Canadian politics that the status quo does not give us space to share our beliefs and change policy. As a result, it is us, the
watch
youth,
it
who've had to
change
take it
policy.
upon ourselves to do that.
Not you.
Whether the voting age is 16 or 18, the YPC, the Young Politicians in Canada, serves as a vehicle to create that change, to give youth of any background, wherever in this country, the ability to come and to engage in Canadian politics. So while we see the lowering of the voting age to 16 shares many values with ours, we will continue to fight, regardless what it is, for greater inclusion in youth, or greater inclusion of youth in politics, because that is what Canada needs so desperately to create a change for the better. Thank you.
It's Charlie Angus, and I sat on the parliamentary committees when Mr. Polyev, who was a young politician, was overseeing democratic reform, which meant screwing people out of their right to vote. That was the whole plan. They went after indigenous people. They went after marginalized people. The need that they insisted on all kinds of voting requirements and visual cards and addresses. And the reserves I represented, people don't have street addresses. It was about keeping people from voting, because the people who could vote can change our country. And so for too long, this attitude is that young people aren't mature enough, they're juvenile, they're silly. This is a way of denying the incredible energy that would come, that would force politicians to wake up. And I will say, for 20 years, I've been in high school after high school. When we have mock elections, because we don't get real elections in high school, I've had better questions, better participation, better understanding of issues among every single class I've ever spoken in than I've heard at many public debates. So I think our democracy is troubled right now. Democracy is in a fragile state. Democracy is facing the dangerous, toxic levels of disinformation and online interference. Young people aren't that dumb. They will bring a freshness and accountability. So to keep democracy alive in a time we see around the world where it's being threatened, and it is a precious thing, I would say let's bring in the young people, because they will protect it.
Like, had this debate and vote.
Just how about that guy? See, should he vote? Just look what happened to him. Look what happened to Spicoli. He went on to become kind of a political activist on his, didn't he? Yeah. Oh man. First, you get elected prime minister, promising to legalize weed and decriminalize drugs. And then, after you do that, you get all the youngsters together and you let them vote. Because there's so much wisdom there. Oh my, okay, legalized weed and 16-year-old voters, it doesn't seem like a really good combination to me. Coupled with a massive disinformation problem, propaganda, and a time of war when our democracy is under threat. And you have huge protests right now with political activists who literally want to destabilize all of Western society. Let's let the 16-year-olds run things. Wow. Again, really? Oh my God. I don't even want to look in the chat. Probably half the people are disagreeing with me. That's okay. It's all right. You'll see. You'll find out when it's too late. Donald Trump. You want to talk about Donald Trump and his court case? I guess we could get into it. Democracy is messy at the best of times. It's always messy. I don't think we need any more chaos. Let the kids be kids. All right? That's my editorial for the night. One of them, anyway. I'll be right back. Don't go away. We'll talk about Donald Trump on the other side.
Maverick News. Fighting for freedom.
Spicoli. Jeez. Yesterday it was Robert De Niro. Today, Sean Penn. Talk about retro. Talk about getting old. How old is that movie, man? See, that's the thing. Young kids today wouldn't even have a frame of reference for that. They'd be like, who's that guy? Yeah. On the other side, though, like, I couldn't tell you what's going on with the latest rapper. I don't know. I see this entertainment news. I don't even know who these people are. And I didn't go see the Barbie movie either. I can barely watch movies anymore because they're all so woke. And it just drives me crazy. So, Donald Trump talking about reality television and entertainment. Hush money trial. Jury began deliberations today, but still no verdict. So what do we know about this? The court adjourned after several hours. They started deliberations. They'll be back at it tomorrow morning, 9:30 a.m. sharp. And even after the jury was dismissed, the judge and attorneys for both sides continued to speak. And while deliberations were underway, the jury sent out 2 notes. They requested information from the court. The information they were looking for was related to the testimony of David Pecker and Michael Cohen. And they asked to hear the judge's instructions in those areas again, because the judge did provide, as they always do, information and instructions to the jury so that the jury can understand how the law works as it relates to the evidence given, how they are supposed to apply the law as they consider the evidence. For instance, they said that they cannot make a decision based only on the evidence presented by Cohen because he's actually a co-conspirator, so to speak, in the case, because he was party or part of the alleged activities that might be related to the crimes that are alleged to have been committed, which is to hide hide money from the government so that it looks like it's for something else, these payments that were made to Stormy Daniels in order to improve or promote Donald Trump as a political candidate. Anyway, so yeah, these instructions were given, and then they wanted clarification on that. So they're obviously giving this a lot of consideration. I think there were 34 different areas that the judge had to give instructions on because there are 34 counts of falsified business records and in these allegations. And that's what Trump is accused of. That's what he's facing in connection with these hush money payments to Stormy Daniels. So it becomes very complex, the way that the law has to be applied here. And one of the reasons it's complex is because a case like this has never really been tried before. And the legal foundation that this case is resting on it's like based on an interpretation of a few different laws. And I'm not even sure that it holds water. So it's kind of dangerous territory in a way for Donald Trump because it depends on how the jury approaches this after listening to the judge on the instructions and how they apply those instructions and whether they do it properly and come up with the right decision. It's a very complex legal maze that they have to wind through to determine if he's guilty or not. And we've seen, I guess, the government officials already talking about with the Secret Service about what they're going to do if they have to lock him up. Isn't that interesting? We're that close to having a former president of the United States thrown in the slammer. And can you imagine what would happen, what will happen, what could happen, what is likely to happen if they do that? Protests? You think? Talking about burning it down, again, it kind of seems like there are people out there that want this kind of stuff to happen, doesn't it? Very disruptive. Dangerous times. Am I missing anything else here about this? Yeah, I mean, it took the judge over an hour to explain the law and go through these instructions. And they were not given a written copy of the instructions, although they are allowed to ask for them to be read back if needed. However, they were allowed to take notes. And from the reports that I've seen, it didn't appear as though many of the jurors were taking notes while they were being given those instructions. I would say if I were Donald Trump, I'd be a little worried about that. Plus, a lot of speculation out there, a lot of people saying that the judge is very biased against Trump. I don't know. Anyway, all the networks following this huge story. We're just going to have to wait. Let's wait until tomorrow. I don't know if we will even get a verdict tomorrow because it's so complex. No telling how long the jury might take on this. No verdict today, though, so we'll just let it slide for the moment and come back to it tomorrow. Now, if you have a Nissan, you're going to want to pay attention to what I'm about to tell you because you might not want to be driving your car. They have issued a do not drive notice. All this because they have a problem with airbags. 48,000 vehicles in Canada. I think this is probably going to extend to the United States as well. This is because Nissan, some older Nissans equipped with Takata airbag inflators, run the risk of exploding during a crash. So this warning applies to about 48,000 vehicles, including 2002 to 2006 Nissan Sentras, 2002 to 04 Pathfinders, 02 to 03 Infiniti QX4s. The owners of those vehicles, if you have one, you're being told do not drive it. They will be repaired free of charge. If in doubt, get your VIN number, call the dealership. And you'll find out if your vehicle is affected by this recall. They have reports, I guess, of 58 people being injured and one person being killed since 2015 associated with the inflators in Nissan cars. Across the United States, federal officials have racked up 27 deaths and 400 alleged injuries across all affected cars as well. So there's also a release from the U.S. National Highway Traffic Safety Administration saying that even minor crashes can result in exploding Takata airbags that can kill or produce life-altering gruesome injuries. And these older models are of particularly high risk. This is not the only auto manufacturer to have problems with these airbags resulting in recalls. This has been a massive problem for a number of years now. Those inflators actually have resulted in some 67 million Takata airbag products, I think, being recalled overall so far across different manufacturers: Honda, Ford, BMW, Toyota, Stellantis, Chrysler products, Mazda, Nissan in this case, as this continues. So the U.S. recall landing page, as I said, it extends to the United States as well. It on the government recall website, it says this safety defect can, in capital letters, kill or seriously injure you or your passengers. So be careful. And Robert Brand wants to know if there's any recall on Lada. I don't know. Are we even importing Ladas right now? I don't think they even sell them in the U.S., do they, anymore? I don't think so. You might be able to get a Lada in Canada. Yeah, if you pay, just looking it up here, $3,500 to broker in the U.S. And Lada is, I don't know of any dealers in Canada. Maybe I have to look into it. I'm sure if you search online, you'll be able to find it. Get a used one. I haven't seen a new Lada on the road anywhere in years. Ladas. When I was young and they were selling Ladas, man, those things were just rust buckets. They would they would rot out and turn to dust faster than you could pay them off, even though they were super cheap, sort of like disposable cars at the time. No. Ladas. I think they're a lot better now than they were. And when we've looked at cars over in Russia, you know, what I've seen is they still seem a little Spartan compared to most other Japanese, European, and North American vehicles, but they're a lot better than they were. And as I saw them, they probably are priced right. I'd probably buy one, because I'm sure the quality is much improved, be a lot more reliable today than they were back in the 70s and 80s. So we'll continue to keep an eye on that. Stay with me. I'm going to check in and see what's going on up there in Ottawa. I'll be right back.
Maverick News. The world is watching.
Okay, and you know what I'm going to do? I want to bring somebody special on here for a moment tonight. I'm going to make a call and see if I can get this person on the line. I don't know if this is going to happen because I don't know if they're there or not. They don't know I'm calling. Let's see if we can get this person on the line. Okay. I really want to talk to this person. There it is right there. I've got the number. Okay, hang on. I'm going to call. I don't want to put him on the spot, so I'm going to run a little promo. I'll be right back while I cue this up. It's going to be, you're going to like it. Don't go away.
Maverick News. The world is watching.
Okay, I got him on the line. He's live with us right now. Let me make sure that this is turned up so people can hear you. Okay. All right. Pastor, tell people who we're speaking with right now.
This is Chaplain Paul. I'm in Phoenix. I serve in long-term care ministry for over 14 years. I've been a health care activist for close to 30 years. I'm heavily involved with our elected officials, fighting every day to improve the safety and quality of care in long-term care and in American health care. And I was talking to Rick yesterday, and we're kind of kicking around ideas, and I told him a joke, and he laughed so hard. He had to have the neighbors come over and pick him up off the floor, and then he said, would I say the joke on the air? And I said, sure, no problem.
Okay, so here we go. This is the joke that Chaplain Paul shared with me yesterday, and I wanted to have him share this with us tonight because it was so uplifting, and it's going to make us smile. So, Chaplain, it's all yours. Take it away.
Right. So there's these friars, like monks, and they grow beautiful flowers and vegetables, and so they decide they're going to open a florist shop where they're going to sell their flowers, and they begin to sell their flowers, and then there's another florist across town who's losing business. The friars, the prices are so low, and they want to just make everybody happy. But the other guy's losing business, so he goes over there and he asks them, can you please raise your prices? And they're like, no, we can't do that. This is for the poor, and this is for helping people. And then, so the guy goes and gets Hugh McTavish, McMillan, McMurt, McFryer, the toughest guy in town, to go and talk to the friars. So he goes and talks to the friars, and they still don't want to, they don't want to lower the price. So he beats them up, and they shut their doors, which goes to prove only Hugh can prevent florist fires. There you go. And it took me a month just to be able to say that without laughing.
Only
Hugh can prevent forest fires. Like only you can prevent forest fires. I can't even say it. But I'm so used to saying it that way now. I can't even say it like Smokey the Bear says. So can you tell him the right line, Rick? Because
yes.
I'm so used to saying the punchline, I don't even know the right line anymore.
Only Hugh can present florist fires.
No, not that line. The line of Smokey the Bear, his line.
Oh, well, that's what he says. Only you can prevent forest fires. Isn't that what he says?
All right. Yes, but you see, I've been saying the joke so long, I can't say it normally anymore. So you got to help me with this because it's really a problem. I mean, someone says, have you ever heard of Smokey the Bear? And I go, yeah, only Hugh can prevent forest fires. And they're looking at me like, this guy's a lunatic. I can't say it normally anymore, so I'm done.
Yeah. I just looked this up, and did you know that Smokey Bear's famous slogan, only you can prevent forest fires, was created or was first used back in 1947 by the Wartime Advertising Council, which is now known today as the Ad Council.
I never knew that.
I didn't know that either, but I know it now because I Googled it. Makes it seem like I'm
Now,
smart.
now here's a line for you. Only patriots can start. What do they call it? What do they call it when there's like what do they call it when people get all upset and what's a fire? Okay, only true patriots can start. Oh my God, I can't think of it. It's a real firestorm. There it is. Only true patriots can start a firestorm for justice and truth. There, that's going to be our new slogan. Okay, slogan.
Okay. Well, Chaplain Paul, we're just at the end of the program, and I wanted to close things off in a way that would uplift people. That's why I called you, because I knew you could bring a little positivity to the program tonight.
Anytime, Rick, and like I always tell you, Jesus loves you, and so do I. And anybody listening, Chaplain Paul says Jesus loves you, and so do I. And with that, I'll say goodbye.
Thank you, sir. I will talk to you again very soon. Really appreciate you.
Have a blessed.
All right.
Have a blessed day. Okay.
Love
Bye-bye.
you. Take care. Bye. There we go. Chaplain Paul. We haven't spoken to him in a while. Great to have him back on the program. We'll get him back on for a longer interview in the days ahead. It'll be great to have him back because he's been working on some stuff and telling me some things that need some attention, some issues to help some people who otherwise might not get the help that they need, and he's out there fighting for them. So, people in long-term care facilities and so on. So, yeah, happy to get him back on too, all the way from Arizona. And with that, folks, I am going to wrap things up for the night. Hang on a second here. Well, give me a second. I've got something coming in.
Maverick News. The world is watching.
Okay, and I am back, and that was a call coming in, but anyway, we'll deal with more of that tomorrow. We are going to close things off for the night here. It is the end of the program, and I appreciate you guys hanging out here as usual. As always, a privilege. I will be back here tomorrow night, same time, same channel, 7 p.m. Eastern, the Maverick News channel, where we have the antivirus programs for your mind. Catch you on the flip side.
This has been a Maverick Multimedia production.